Alright, welcome back to Parallel World Pharmacy. It's about frickin' time I get back to the series after being away for it seems like over a week. Yep, this one's discussing episodes, I believe it's going to be 5 through 9. Now, the first episode is simply this. You have Pharma where he's got a shop up and running, but not getting many customers. And everything's okay. He's got a few regulars here. They're not exactly very trustworthy because he's a noble. And then his parents had a visit. And they show up what's inside the actual pharmacy. Like there's the front, the place to make all the medicine, a sort of mini clinic there. Basically stuff you'll find in a pharmacy. You're like, okay, so, and of course his mother suggests basically need a little bit something more besides just medicine. Cosmetics. And just by sheer coincidence, there's a customer comes in, apparently passes out. Apparently she's been sliced up what wants to do with Snow White skin. So instead of using white powder stuff, which apparently is very toxic, again, charged you with lifespan, so he comes up with a more better solution for this woman. So comes up with a special cream, and well, it becomes very popular. That gets attention to the Queen. The Queen's a little bit upset the fact he just consulted her first, but she's very happy with the fact for the progress. Heck, even he gave her some, in order to make sure she doesn't punish him for not telling her first, make her some lip gloss. And make her happy for a very beautiful woman who's only 24 at the start of the series. Yep, and then some of the now we still have it here where the pharmacy guild in the city is the way you see in the anime is that the person who's head of it is very stubborn, and it seems like he does not give a damn about Pharma just because he's a noble. And it's also mentioned here that apparently none of the pharmacies in the entire city are allowed to sell his product. None of them, because he's not a member of the guild. And of course, at one point, one of the members who actually was somebody who Farmer did see before, because he went by the shop. So his daughter gets sick, so he goes to the local clinic to help her, but the person's not there, going on for a week. So Pharma just volunteers to take him straight to the clinic. Now, his perspective, he thought because he's a commoner that they want to do a social thing. No, it has nothing to do with social status. The reason? To prevent infection. He's like, okay, that seems pretty reasonable. So he examines her, and of course there's a little eye thing, which first time he's done in a little while. First time since he diagnosed the Queen, he's used that. So he diagnosed her condition as a severe cold. So he takes her weight, age, gives her age, her name, and of course, asks him to wear a mask just to protect himself. Now, I at least got to appreciate the fact somehow he developed a way to develop regular surgical mask. And he's like, why are a mask for? Infection. Okay. So he does treat her, and of course come back and if there's any problem in the middle of the night, I'll be happy to come by in the middle of the night to help her. And how much is it? Little bread, practically nothing. And just want to help out. It's not a really big loss for him. He's already rich anyway, so. And apparently the other guild members, when he basically tells them at the next meeting about what happened, the leader's like, screw you, and throws him out of the guild and takes away all of his licenses. And during this period of time, now apparently Pharma is not liking the way that guild works, so he decides to establish his own separate pharmacy. Which, of course, thanks to that guild member, thanks to the other pharmacy who got themselves kicked out, he just welcomes him right in. Got a new shop front. Heck, he even provided him with a special uniform. Yep. And it's also established. Now, it's also been suggested that the leader of this guild was responsible for. They also have what happened here. Prior to all this, we actually have a blinded horse full of dirt smashed right through the freaking gate and right to the front of the thing. Oh yeah, my damage business. No, it's perfectly fine. And luckily enough, basically, people who are regulars of his wanted to clean up the mess. And we also have it where, before I continue what happened here, we also have a woman claims her folly collapsed, and of course she kind of, though it turns out it was actually trapped by the church. because I think he's some evil spirit because he doesn't have a shadow. So he defends himself very properly. And at one point, the leader of the group gets injured. So he basically just treats his leg. And, like, after using all their spells against him, thinking he's some god. So, like, thinking that when I kill him, so like, nope, not necessary. But I'll treat your wound. And, of course, they accept him for what he is. He just basically just wants to help people. Does not want to hurt them. But he's like, he'll defend himself if necessary. So he treats the wound. And these people are inquisitors. So as basically a reward for thanking him, the guy went through a bunch of processes to become the Archbishop of the capital. Yes, seriously. And as a reward for saving his life, gives him a magical wand, which he used to float around. If you see the old Tower sequence, you see him flying around a magical wand like a witch riding a broom. And a talisman. The talisman is to hide his divinity, so people don't spread rumors about a boy who has no shadow. Smart on his part. Yep. Now, this comes right after the whole damage to the storefront. That happens just in the first couple episodes. Next part is basically stuff with the pharmacy guy and with the establishment of his special guild, and of course, like, with, like, him getting a new storefront, because the original storefront had, like, steps. Apparently, they remodeled the whole storefront where it's like a spitting image, a parallel pharmacy, to become a partner pharmacy. And apparently, pharma's techniques become so popular, they've had lectures, take all of the stuff, and they also mentioned, and of course this is of course later on, they mentioned that the death rate has dropped by 20% since pharma's introduction of his new methods, which are pretty useful. Good job on his part. The Queen is very happy to hear that, the fact that the percentage of deaths have dropped dramatically, things improved, and of course, Pharma's older brother, who was supposed to visit, gets delayed because of a epidemic that spread in an island, which turned out to be a version of the Black Death. Yes, and of course they mentioned that what happened in real life, what happened in Europe back in the 15th century. I've heard about this particular plague. I've heard about it in documentaries. This plague, those of you who never heard of the bubonic plague, this plague wiped out 50% of the European population. And I don't know how much period of time this was. It looked like a pair of months. Of also of rats. As for what the cause of it was, didn't really know. It's just that basically, well, it's something that people who are European basically, who basically learn about this. I learned about this via documentaries. Didn't learn much about U.S. history per se, but thanks to documentaries like stuff about the Roman Empire. Basically, thanks to historical documentaries, that's how I found out about the bubonic plague. And plus, also, it made an appearance on Torchwood. And you're thinking, really? It did? How the heck did the bubonic plague make an appearance on Torchwood, a fictional, magical science fiction show? Well, thanks to them opening up the big rift that had, of course, in this rift, Captain Jack Harkness and I believe it was Gwen had been transferred back to World War II, so he wanted to bring him back to present day, and so one of the characters, inadvertently when he opened up the rift, brought a whole bunch of stuff to the present, including the bubonic plague, which one of the members of Torchwood, who is Asian, apparently had never heard of it, which perfectly understandable because in her continent they didn't have this particular thing happen. So that was actually the only time in fiction I've ever heard of the bubonic plague. That was the first time I've ever heard of the bubonic plague ever referred to in fiction, the Black Death. Now, has it happened any other time? I think it also happened, I think it was mentioned in an episode of classic Doctor Who, but it's not really appeared very much at all, probably because it's not a subject people want to bring up in fiction. This is by far the first time in Japanese anime I've ever heard anybody bring up the Black Death. So far, Frank is like, is Black Death? He basically talked to his father about it. He's like, you're definitely correct. It's definitely the Black Death. Though it's a version of the Black Death, they do mention that the last case they had was a case that happened 210 years prior to the events of the series. So, and of course, Farmer's Brother makes a brief appearance in the episode. So they set up like quarantine procedures. Basically, everything you basically would handle when it comes to an epidemic. Yes. Everything, including like masks, and of course, also this particular plague basically just eviscerate the entire colony population. Now, in case you're curious though, has this happened in real life where an entire colony is wiped out via a virus? Yes, it has. From what I've heard, mostly it happens on islands. And usually it happens on some small islands where they have populations, but not entirely. So, and of course, explains to the Queen, of course, they don't, and of course, they have this special merchant fair coming up really soon. They want to handle this as quickly as possible with the proper procedures. And of course, Pharma goes off to deal with the plague, and that's where the episode ends. Really good set of episodes. Love it. I love the fact we progress the story along really well. Like, first with the stuff with Pharma Shadow, the stuff with the other guild. By the way, in case you're curious, what happens to the head of that pharmaceutical guild? Because the fact it was really light novel when I read that he was found out, definitely was responsible for that. Because by the way, in the anime, they never actually, it was suspected that the one guy was involved with it. His punishment in the book, I don't know if this mentioned episode 10 or at least number 12. His punishment for being responsible for that, he gets his business suspended for 3 weeks. And I think he had to pay a severe fine for what he did. I don't know what happened to his guild, though. And apparently that Firma's guild had grown tremendously. Like, probably beyond the city itself. Because they also happen in the episode where they set up the new cosmetic. They also set up us because the fact that the special cosmetic kept running out so quickly. And he didn't have enough manpower to produce it. He did have materials, but not enough manpower. So the woman who was his first person to treat that, she just wanted to set up a subsidiary. And he's like, that's a good idea. And here's the thing. The pharmacists basically they're helping her are in fact people who are members of families. They basically had their own kids. They basically want to help out. And this is perfectly fine. I'm like, wow. This actually is a good business decision too, except a subsidiary. Yes, in case you're curious though, this has happened in real life where subsidiaries are set up because of stuff like this happening. I believe so. I'm not entirely sure. My dad can confirm this because he's dealt with business before. So set up a subsidiary like this is probably perfectly natural to do. And it's interesting though that basically the writer, both the anime, probably also the original writer too, apparently it takes inspiration from real life businesses, and he probably also a lot of medical research, because a lot of the stuff he brings up here is practically real life diseases people deal with in real life. And also to have the first season end with dealing with the Black Death. I think it's really cool on the part of the anime to do that. And in case you're curious though, how many chapters was the original book? 12. The first book had 13 chapters. That was covered in 4 episodes. Actually, it was also kind of wrapped up with the start of episode 5, but mostly book 2 took up pretty much the rest of the season. Which is a bit unusual. I've never heard of a second book doing that, where it takes up practically like 8 episodes. Have you ever heard of it before, where one book, well actually, this is book 2. Usually the longest time book 2 might take up is like 4 or 6 episodes. That's the usual amount, but 8? 8 episodes. Yeah, that's a first for me too. But I love this series. I have one more episode left. And then, basically reading some light novels. Be occasionally dropping in for some anime. The next anime I'll basically be covering, especially as I'm almost done reading the manga, will be Girlfriend. But yes, there will be other videos coming today. This will be wrapping up here. My next video is my Comic Corner, and then I'm also going to be doing a review of the newest episode of Case Closed, and 2 manga reviews. It's going to be 2 catching up videos of 2 particular manga. Which manga, am I ask? Black Butler and One Punch Man. I'm going to be catching up with these particular ones in one full video, covering, in the case of Black Butler, about 10 chapters. In the case of One Punch Man from the last, so it looks about 13 chapters. But I'll try to cover it as best I can. There's a lot of fight scenes happening in One Punch Man. In the case of Black Butler, I can really cover stuff pretty much no problem. And can you believe the series has almost reached almost 200 chapters? Yeah, Black Butler is currently the longest running monthly manga I've ever read. Like, this manga has been going on for almost 20 years, seems like. Yeah, but I can't wait to discuss that one. Okay, so that's the episode of you. Next is going to be Comic Corner, and then the final episode to cover for Parallel Pharmacy for now until next week. And then after that, it will be, we'll review that one. I'll review Black Butler. And then I'll do Case Closed. And I'll cap off today, hopefully, with the newest, basically, I'll come One Punch Man at that point. Okay, next video. Bye.